Started, so if you could take your seats. It's 5 o'clock, and I'm going to call the meeting to order. Yes, please silence your phones. So as proof of notice of the meeting, you received both an email on May the 5th as well as a reminder today. As far as the board members present, we have 4 present at the head table, and Lou Perry is on the phone, so the board is fully in attendance. We have members from various committees. I'm not going to deal individually with that. We will carry that forward in the minutes. We also have our partners in the survey, the representatives from the Community Association, Roger Efron and Fred Bauman. I know that Harry Ornstein is in the audience. Michelle Trent. Oh, is Michelle? Okay, and Michelle Trent was instrumental as well in the survey, and we'll talk further about that. So we're going to start off just as a reminder, as I mentioned, the collaboration on our activities leading up to tonight for what is a special board meeting in 2 ways. Number one, we delayed the start of this meeting from May 3rd to tonight so that we could have the results. We will carry on with an entire board meeting. We are intending to try to get people home for dinner, so we're going to cut short some of our discussions. But most importantly, we will start off with the survey results, so net reputations, and I'll introduce the presenter as we get to that point, has joined us, and we'll make that presentation. In order, as we discussed, the public comments will follow. I will allow board members to make comments relative to the beginning of the, beginning after the survey is completed, the presentation, for reactions, and then we will turn it over for public comments. So just as a reminder, because through this process there have been many feedback elements. David McMahon, the presenter, will take us through all of the statistics on the distribution of the emails and how the response to those surveys, I guess the performance, some characteristics, bounce back is a critical one. How many people were not able to take the survey and what was done to ensure that that was taken care of. And I can tell you there was only one person who was unable to take the survey that was on the list. We had one person, unfortunately, that was wanting to take the survey. Once the list was established at the beginning of the survey, it was decided we would not change that listing. The other item to note is very important. The board made a decision at the last meeting to ensure that we surveyed the largest section of the community by using the expanded list of just under 2,000 effective members versus what normally would be used, which is the voting list, 1 person per household. So that increases obviously the input, and that is what was used for this survey. And that increases obviously the perspective that is carried forward. It should be noted that this is not a vote. And a lot of people have said to me, why is this not being treated like a vote? If we would have treated it like a vote, we would have had 1,377 potential inputs. We increased the potential by 50%. That's the reason why the choice was made as it was made. We also communicated how, who, and why Net Reputations was chosen. A number of people have asked, why would we use this company? We went through that. We communicated that in the last board meeting. We established and reviewed the requirements for the survey to ensure that everyone understood how did Net Reputations get the inputs for the survey. So they received the email list, they received all of the inputs, which were 6 topical areas to be covered in the survey, and each of the choices for those were identified as well. So there might have been 4 or 5 choices, as you now know as you took the survey. We also tried to make sure that you knew, the public knew, the homeowners knew, that the first email would come from the POA, so you understood. You would see a foreign email come to you from Chris Hinman, who was another representative of Net Reputations. That was to ensure that if you had not, if your spam settings were set in such a way that we didn't see a large bounce back. And so that was helpful in ensuring that we made every opportunity to get people to receive the survey. And so with that, I'm not going to say any more until David is finished. And as we do, we need for sure to provide David the courtesy and respect and ask that there is no questions, that he finishes the survey, and that there are no outbursts, just as we do during our meeting. And before public comments are made, I'll remind us all, because we do need to focus in on what is said and then take the action necessary from that. So with that, David, Director of Client Services for Net Reputations.
Thank you, Bill. As he mentioned, my name is David McMahon. I am the Director of Client Services at Net Reputation. Web Presence LLC is our parent company, and one of our other sisters is Reputation Sciences. We've been doing market research surveys for quite some time. We do a wide array of things on the internet, but we were contacted by the boards collectively earlier this year to submit a proposal to undertake this survey for the communities. And we submitted that proposal, and from there had some back and forth, just as Bill was alluding to make sure that everything came across, as hitting on the issues that are at the heart of, the conversation and the dialogue, so that everyone can make a well-informed decision, but also making sure that the results would be untainted, meaning not providing a simple link that could be, shotgunned out there to folks who are not on the list. So there was some settings, set up so that you'd get one opportunity to complete from a unique email address, if that makes sense. But yes, upon meeting with both the Venetian Property Owners Association and the Venetian Golf Club and River Club Community Association, it was clear, the goal is to be independent, credible, and reliable. From there, we had multiple meetings to make sure that we removed any bias from the questions, and that, again, there wouldn't be the ability for the results to get tainted. The ultimate goal of the survey, is to better understand the community's, how the residents feel about, the proposed plan and how to act moving forward. And as Bill alluded to, this was not an official vote by any means, but a way to gauge the sentiment. So the first 7 questions were designed to assess the level of concern on the top priorities for the issues that the development presents, and then the next were focusing on feelings on how to respond. And then we followed up with some demographic information to see if there might be a need to disaggregate the data, but also to just get some updated, statistics for the community as there's been some turnover and just some general, population consensus. But again, not, an official vote, as Bill alluded to, but goal to get everyone's feedback. Now, when it comes to surveys, there's a lot of different, statistics that you can get enamored with, for lack of a better term. But, the main focus here, we wanted to get a strong response and completion rate in that short window of time, the week that was provided. And so for reference, the response rate is the number of completed surveys versus the number of emails that were sent. And then the completion rate is the number of completed surveys versus the number of respondents who entered the survey. And for reference, there was a very, very strong participation in this survey. Of the 1,928 emails that were sent, 1,102 individuals completed the survey, equating to 57%. And for reference, the industry average is right around 25 to 30% for most surveys. And in relation to the completion rate, we had 91%, meaning that the 1,102 that completed it relative to the 1,215 who opened and entered the survey but did not complete it. For reference, questionnaires an average between 9 and 14. On surveys, it's usually about a 56% completion ratio. Just folks, start it, stop it, give up due to time constraints. We tried to keep the questions brief, and the tool's initial estimate was right around 70%. But we saw it right there, 90% range as far as who got the survey and completed it. Now, the methodology, to Bill's point, we actually gathered, I think it was close to 2,000 emails, but then deduplication, removing any potential errors, there was a total of 1,928 unique emails. And from there, 1,543, so 80% were opened. Unopened were another 10%, marking it at 202. The click-through rate, so the folks that went through the survey link and got to the submission portal, so to speak, was 1,215 folks, so 63%. And then, like I said before, 1,102 residents completed the survey for 57%. The bounce rate, to Bill's point, whether it's spam filters or previously opting out from a potential survey provider, or maybe a typo on an email, the bounce rate, there was 126 emails that bounced, which equated to the 6.5%. And then previous opt-outs from the survey system was at 2.8% for 54 folks. To Bill's point, there was very specific instructions to contact Kelly and or Bill and Chris Hinman so we could resubmit if you did not receive an email with the survey link. We had 29 requests come in, so 1.5% followed those instructions. And then we had one individual who was unable, technologically to submit, so there was a manual survey printed out and submitted through the system, if that makes sense. But again, for a rule of thumb, for a population size of 2,000, for something to be statistically relevant, you could sample instead of offering a full survey to everybody. You could target a sample, and the statistics there, it's right at 697 people you would have to sample from 2,000 for a 95% confidence level and a 3% margin of error. But as Bill alluded to in the conversations with both boards, we didn't want to pick and choose or have any sampling error. We wanted to offer it to everyone so that they could voice their concern and make sure they felt heard. Even though, again, it's not an official vote, we wanted to open the dialogue so everyone could make a well-informed decision. And so the first question really was just that, designed to gauge the importance, 1 to 10, of ultimately the shopping center issue to everyone. And the average response was right at just under 8, 7.97. There being a large percentage of folks were in the 10s, but the mean right there just under 8, with some folks that didn't have as big a concern. But for the most part, everyone is really dialed in on all of these issues. And then the next 6 questions were, again, targeting basically ancillary issues of the development to identify what's the biggest concern of the group. First and foremost, starting with entering and exiting and overall access to the Venetian. This had the highest mark. The average was 9.19. And then from there, the next question, environmental, pollution, wildlife, 7.92 was the tally. For lighting from the center, another potential concern, 7.5 was the average. Property values, we gauged the interest there, and 8.53, so a little bit more on the scale. Safety and security came back right in that same area, 8.54. And then last but not least, traffic noise came back second highest with 8.93. From that standpoint, just tallying them all up in order of overall concern, entering and exiting and access to the Venetian was the top concern. Close second being traffic and traffic noise. Then kind of split between safety and security, property values, and then environmental considerations and lighting from the center. And so with those, next up we tried to dive into the overall opinions of how do you respond and how to go forward and what decisions the community can make as a whole. With number 8 being, in your opinion, and we offered 5 options here, what should be done to address the issues created by the proposed shopping center project? And again, we had a list of answers there, and even offered, none of the above as an option, basically. But the mix on this one, and we'll come back to it later, but the highest percentage was, 34% roughly was an answer of a team should meet with Neal communities before the application is submitted to address all issues of concern and identify mitigation and resolution opportunities, with 374 votes. Close second was that no meeting with Neal, but rather write to elected officials now and speak in opposition of the shopping center when the application is before the Planning Commission at 31.22% or 344 responses. And then a close third, was a team should not meet with Neal communities, but only through an attorney who would litigate issues as needed, was just under 30% with 29.67 of the results and 327 votes, within 5%, 57 folks saying just do nothing, wait it out. And here's this in graphical form. It's the same data. It just cuts off the description there to see how close it is, but at the same time, we'll dive into that a little bit more later. Next up being, what is your opinion about hiring an attorney for this matter, if it will result in a special assessment for all of Venetian homeowners? And here it was close, but it was leaning slightly in favor, with 56% saying, yes, I'm in favor of hiring an attorney with the understanding of the necessity of a special assessment on my property to pay for legal services, 621 of the 1,102 results, versus 43% saying, no, I'm not in favor of hiring an attorney if it would require a special assessment on my property for the legal services. And again, just in graph form, the same breakdown. Very close, but still a decent percentage interested in the legal route. All right, number 10, what comes closest to your thoughts on this issue? Again, there's obviously a lot of potential thoughts on this issue. We tried to bracket them accordingly, but also provide, none of the above as an option. But the third possible answer ranked first with only with hiring of an attorney will the Neal application have a chance of being denied by City Council. That was 49% with 550 of the votes. Next in line was, if they could fix some of the issues with traffic, I would not mind a shopping center. That was 20% of the votes. None of the above was 10% of the votes, 113. And then the trailed off from there is with the issue's kind of a done deal. Why is it worth fighting for at 7.99% of the votes, and then 6.99% with there's a good chance the application will be denied by the city, and then basically do nothing. Not really concerned. I think it'll be convenience, 4.5%. And again, this is just in graphical form, the breakdown of those same questions. And then in conclusion, what is your opinion of the Neal Commercial Shopping Center? Overwhelmingly, 75% of the respondents oppose, a shopping center at Laurel. Another 11% support it, and then 13% neither support nor oppose the matter. And then next up, since there's been, like we mentioned, change and turnover of the community, and if needed, the ability to disaggregate the data, seeing if there's any real differences across, the community. We gathered this data from a demographic standpoint, just to kind of have more information, at our disposal, if needed for analysis. And so, male, female gender, pretty, split, on that regard, 49% male, 43% female. The age demographics, prefer not to answer, was selected by those that didn't feel the need, but targeting the average age information. Then residency status with 65% being full-time, another 32% being part-time, and a small percentage that own property but do not reside here anymore. And then the length of home ownership time here with the Venetian, just to see what the breakdown is from a percentage standpoint of how long folks have been with the community, and obviously a large tenured group with 400 plus over 10 years, and then another 5 to 10 years coming in second in that regard, in the 300 range there. But obviously a very seasoned group that have vested interest in what is going on with the community. And the conclusions that you're able to draw and you will use as fodder for the conversation going forward. Overwhelming interest in your constituents. I'd say normal surveys are more along that 30% response rate. Being at the 57%, obviously very passionate interest in making sure your vote was tallied for the survey. Again, majority opposed the development altogether. It's really comes down to, what are the major areas of concern? Entering the Venetian, traffic noise, and safety were the top 3 breakaway priorities. And then what steps, next? It seems somewhat split. Question 8, may hold the answer, diving in, reviewing the percentages there as it was a tight split. But majority feel, meeting is needed in order to protect the interests of the community. And from that standpoint, the survey, effectively gauged the sentiment of the constituents, and it was able to give an accurate picture of the real conversations that folks are having, out in the community, whether it's, at the mailbox or at the golf center, et cetera. These are the heart of the issue. And then, question 8, going back to that, really, 34% saying they'd like to meet with Neal before an app is filed, and then 30% saying seek legal, advice, as well. So there's opportunity there, I think, with the board, to open the dialogue, and we can, answer any questions that may happen with the survey itself, but there's definitely enough information there for everyone to chew on and digest and really get the dialogue going from that regard. But yeah, from there, I think Bill's going to turn it over to questions.
Thank you, David. So yes, we will take questions. One of the things I want to make sure you know is that first, this session is being taped. It will be available on YouTube. The presentation material will be posted in the next day or 2 on the website, and as well on the Community Association website. So it will be available, this presentation in total. With questions, as we have in the past, I just want to remind you first, it's 3 minutes. We will be strictly adhering to that. It is likely that there will be no responses to questions because it would be intended that we take that into advisement as a part of our next steps. We do not necessarily have the ability to respond with, this is exactly what's going to happen, although I will raise the question to the board to share any thoughts, because then we will come back and address. The audience of this survey says, let's meet with Neil, okay? So we obviously then would have to schedule that and determine how that would occur, with or without an attorney. So likely we will talk about that. So without further ado, I know that Roger is going to be carrying the mic. We also will be recording and communicating those questions that are asked on Zoom, and we will take those in order. So I'll let Roger take it from here as far as the order for taking questions or comments.
And one other thing we talked about is we're not going to talk about the survey itself. That's been done. We're talking about the results today. Okay, I'm going around. Questions. First, I got to go over here. The only thing would just state your name and where you live. I think that would help for the record. Yes, ma'am.
Suzanne Jerry. My thought is this. In the survey, when you asked about assessment, for people, I don't think they comprehended what it would cost, like $3.38 for per each resident for, say, $50,000 worth of a lawyer fee. So when you talk about assessment, people can panic in that state and think, oh, what does that mean? Does it mean $50, $100, $200? It is a minimal amount of money. So, somebody else probably has the figure better than I do, but I heard this from several different people about how minimal that cost would be, like less than $2 or something like that. Suzanne Jerry, thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. Questions? You are?
Darlene Cieslak, 262 Portofino. I did not take away from the survey what you took away. I did not take away that we want to meet with Neil. Neil's been here. He said he'd stay here till the last dog died. So I don't see how meeting with Neil gets anything done. I say hire the attorney and let's move on.
And you are?
Peter Crocchiola,
Okay, Peter.
102 Balanza Court. I agree with the woman here before. On the survey, when I saw the information on question number 8, the third point puts it to the point of not meeting with Neil. If you combine the second and the third, overwhelmingly, people do not want to meet with Neil, I believe. It was too quick to understand it.
Anything else? And you are? Here, let me get around here. You're on camera here.
My name is Greg Lenzo, 106 Mar-a-Lago Drive. First thing I would do is set up a meeting with the mayor, deputy mayor, and the chair and the co-chair of the planning board. Second thing is I would set up a meeting with Neil, because you're not going to fight the progress in the neighborhood. You want to know what's going on in all of Venice. So that's the reason for the meeting with the mayor. But you're not going to stop the progress. Let's have a meeting with Neil, see what we can get out of him. One of my suggestions is to possibly build a bridge over Laurel Road, almost like the Rialto Bridge in Venice, or even build a tunnel underneath Laurel Road, just like they have at the villages.
Please, folks, please, I'll bring it back, please.
So accept what's going on, because you can see all the other neighborhoods that are built here in the area here. You got 5 new neighborhoods coming in, so there's going to be traffic no matter what, so you're not going to stop it. They have to do a traffic study if they go from 2 to 4 lanes. So they'll do a traffic study. If they have to put a light, they'll put a light. So I think we should all move on, move forward, and that's what we should do. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions here? See one over here. We'll get you, we'll get you. Just a moment. Mr. Parati, have a seat. I'm going over here, this gentleman. I'll be right there with you, sir. No, oh, God, would I not avoid you? This gentleman raised his hand first, and like a good teacher, I call on him. And I'll be coming back to you. You are?
Hi, I'm Rick Cordner, 246 Montaluna Drive. I'm also commenting on question 8. It really gave me indigestion when the presenter left the slide up there with the result of question 8 was 34% say we should meet with Neil. On the contrary, question 8 reveals that nearly two-thirds of the people say you shouldn't meet with Neil. And I just want to make that point.
Could I ask, we don't go with that as Bill does too? Let's just listen to people without going into how we feel. And now we come to Mr. Parati. I'll sit down next to you.
Thank you. Mr. Efron,
You got 3 minutes.
talking to you is like putting the fox in the chicken coop. Aren't you the one who was responsible for the initial meeting of Neil on January 6th? Aren't you the one also who organized the March 1st meeting for Neil? Aren't you the one who spoke to the Civic Association and said that Neil was the next best thing to sliced bread? I am very much concerned that you come here not objectively, and you really don't have the right to monitor this meeting. We want people who are objective. And unfortunately, you said on, I think it was on January 24th, you said to one of the residents, oh, the text that was filed on February 14th is really not the text because it was meant to be 2 other parcels. But that wasn't true. And I'm sorry to tell you, you misled everyone here, and I'm very much concerned that you're using your office for the purpose of misleading the public, and I wish you wouldn't do that.
Thank you. Next. Yes, ma'am. Stand up, please. You are?
Darlene Schimberg,
Okay, Darlene.
7 Torcello Court. I just have a question about a meeting that was held, I believe it was about 10 days ago, with the city council, and where Neil's attorney spoke to the council board regarding the parcel of land we're talking about in the shopping center. Was there any result in that we know of? Did anybody get back to our community regarding that?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming. Questions? As a good auctioneer would say, going once, but let me go back here and see if those viewers are concerned about that. What was that? Go ahead, go ahead.
We just have some comments is all right here that I'm seeing on this meeting. There was a question that asked, why is the board reluctant to hire an attorney? But that's not necessarily what is happening at this time. We're collecting information. So I'll let the board speak to that, though.
Sure.
Yep, that's the only one.
Anything else? Okay. And how many people could I ask her on? About 137 people plus here. Okay. Going once, twice, wait a minute, over here. Thank you, David. Yeah, you don't want to stand. Okay. No. Wait a minute. You are?
Lee Parati. This lady sitting quite next to me mentioned that Boone had a whole hour to present his ideas, and he said he represented 12 developers. We have never found out who those 12 developers are. We approached some members of the committee, approached the city council. They said they did not have a list of that. How do we even know that he represents 12? We also have to keep in mind that Boone, as you can tell by that move and others, is very, very clever and probably a brilliant attorney. So we need to hire a brilliant attorney to represent us. And as a comment in response to the gentleman who proposed the bridge, I have a better proposal. I think we should have a helicopter on the premises. And then we could, once a week, we could all helicopter over to Publix to buy our goods.
Mr. Shade, I think we have finalized this portion of the meeting, so I turn it back over to you. Oh, one last hand, okay. How are you? Thanks for coming today. We appreciate it. And you are?
Betsy Oden, 383 Padova Way. There's been a lot of talk of a traffic study or traffic studies, but I haven't heard any information about what's happening with that going forward. So perhaps somebody could tell us.
Okay. Thanks for coming. Your name again? Betsy Oden. I think that concludes, Mr. Shade, the end of that portion of your meeting.
Okay, so we're going to move into the board discussing next steps. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have each board member that wishes to offer up any comments, because we haven't prepared for this. The results of the board received was yesterday. So the ability to respond with all of the next steps to be well thought out. We are listening to what your suggestions are, your comments. I will wrap up with a response to a couple of comments, because those comments need to be addressed today. They will also be a part of what I would believe would be next steps, so they dovetail together. So any board member that would wish to make a comment, we will have the board go. Roger and Fred Bauman will make comments. Certainly, if we can have Lou Perry, if he wishes, to make a comment on Zoom. We'll see if we can get that piped through. But anyone that wishes to make a comment from the board on next steps.
Good afternoon, everyone. When I took a look at the results from the survey, I was really, I was shocked and disappointed, to be honest with you. 1,928 emails sent out, 1,102 returned. I know that David had said that the industry benchmark is 30%, and we had a little more than that respond to it. The questions really, I thought were very straightforward, but the results ended up being a lot different than I thought. Entry and exit to the community was the #1 concern for the community. Security and traffic, which came in 2 and 3, and with property values at 8.5. We really, when we sat down and put this survey together, we really thought it would be a lot different, to be very honest with you. The importance was only a little below 8, and we know from meeting with Mr. Neal here in the community that Mr. Neal has his plan. He has addressed this plan with the city council many years ago, and they really didn't have any objections to it. He's moved forward, and now the fact that he wants to do it, and like he said himself, he was a great salesman. And the night he was here, I think he was selling us a pig in the poke. It really was. We know that the 4-laning of Laura Road is going to take place, although I read in the paper today that there's even more concern over the funding for that. I know Mr. Neal portrayed himself as Mr. Nice Guy, and he's going to give us give the city and the county all the property and everything, but I think that's a I'll scratch your back if you scratch mine. So, I'll be very honest with you folks. I don't really know what objections that we're going to have with him, and that we're going to have to ask him to kind of cater to us. Whether he does not, I don't really know. I know that my own personal feeling, and I'll let you know that, is that I plan on doing a impact on the city council and the planning boards, and let them know in writing what our objections are to the overall development in the area over there. But this afternoon, we got another email from Mr. Harper sending out his dissertation on what he believes can happen there. I'm not an attorney, but I have from a very reliable source that there was another community in Sarasota County that fought Mr. Neal in regards to a planned unit development and commercial development over there. And they spent over $800,000 and lost. So when our neighbor here says if it's going to be $3.50 a special assessment, let me tell you what, folks, if you've ever been through a special assessment, it cost us a heck of a lot more than that. Just a general mailing for like your general election in December. Minimum cost is $1,500 just for the mailing. So the board has got a lot to consider before we spend our money and your money. And so I'm going to take and stew over this result here and try to make the best decision that I can. And we still want to hear from the neighbors and see what they like to do. But I thought the helicopter was a really good idea, Lee. But I know technology now, it can all be delivered by drones. And so we don't even have to go. We just have to provide a big X in our front yard where they can drop them. So, okay? Thank you.
So I'm very impressed, as usual, with the results and the community's desire for the survey, and the fact that 57% actually completed the survey. So I think that's great results. I have been impressed with the Comcast results, and I'm impressed with this. So you guys just continue to make me smile, because I think you're engaged, and that's very important. We have, I think, 137 people on Zoom, so I guesstimated. I'm not really great with guesstimates, but I think we have somewhere around 300 residents in total. That's awesome. This is a very important issue for us. I think the 75% that oppose this particular commercial property or rezoning effort by Mr. Neal is compelling. I think it's compelling. 75%, we don't agree on tons of stuff, but 75% of us agree that we don't want this. That is just awesome. Awesome. And I think it's so compelling that not only should we hire an attorney, and by the way, we would hire an attorney within the firm, because that's part of what we do, that supports this board. And there are very good attorneys at this legal firm. My second comment is, and Marshall has mentioned this many times, and he was the leading cheerleader and I think strategist and tactician that defeated Walmart. He said we should hire a traffic engineer, and at some point I think we should do that. Last but not least, there are a lot of residents that are engaged on teams and the North Venice Association. I think I got that right. I'm sorry if I have it wrong, but very engaged, doing a lot of good work. Marshall's very engaged, some of which, to be honest with you, I think he should be a little clearer in his communication, but he's an attorney, I'm not. I think we should consider a team of residents not a committee, a team of residents for this board to support this effort on behalf of the residents of Venetian Golf and River Club. And for that, I will yield my time.
Why don't you get your board first, and then
Does Lou Perry want to make a comment on Zoom? Are we able to pipe that back through? We cannot do that, okay. We will have to take Lou's comment at some other time, so Diane said you didn't want to, okay.
Thank you. I was very pleased with the survey and doubly pleased with the firm that we chose. They have been excellent and extremely, extremely responsive. And the other thing that has happened, and oftentimes when you run in these situations, things happen, and that has been the collaboration between the POA and the Community Association. Putting good minds together, especially those who've been working outside the community and those who know the community, is powerful. And the times that we have met, which have been many, and the many hours I've spoken with Bill, have been very fruitful and proven that we have a good team. This issue undoubtedly evokes a great deal of emotions. It's a growth issue, it's disruption to our lives. It's the story of the big bad developer versus the little guy who just wants a piece of paradise. And so therefore, it's charged with a lot of emotions. But in that environment of emotions, there's also poor facts, inaccuracies, and bad information. So I ask that as we proceed forward, that we sort of tamper down a lot of the inaccuracies and that we provide the information to you. Although, realize that if we hire an attorney, that the attorney, and I'm not an attorney, will most likely say, I want to keep everything under wraps and not share it if we're going to go forward with this. You know, in watching a football game, they usually talk about the pluses and minuses going into the game. The pluses on this is the unification of our community. This has been good. The past successes in working through various issues that mainly the Community Association has done, from the noise issues to Jacaranda, for the building of the Publix down there, that was the first one, to all the other types of issues. And finally, as I said before, a plus out of this is now the collaboration, and we seem to be on the same page. But on the other hand, the difficulties are we haven't had a venture like this that we've been to. We haven't had a Neal property, to my knowledge, that has been before us like this. We've not had anything across the street from us, around the corner. The other side, the other fact is the fact that Jeff Boone and Boone Law Firm represents every builder. They do this every single day. They know the system, and when they go into, and we put that in an earlier email, a quasi-judicial, it's not how many people like it or don't. It's what does the law say about his right to build this. That is a key factor that I've learned within all of this. Yes, the letters help. Yes, all of this survey helps. But when it comes down to the decision makers, they will look at the law. And the uncertainty that if we do lose this, are we willing as a community, as Bill said, to spend much money in terms of fighting it? And fighting it means we will fight the city, not Mr. Neal, if they approve it. Let me say, and final thing, that I think this has been healthy for our community. There have been a lot put out, a lot of thoughts around the swimming pool, around the tennis courts. We have talked all through this, and it's been sort of healthy, and hopefully that we will continue in these meetings, if we have more meetings, to talk about that. I could only say this, and not to be fatherly or preachy, but I hope that energy turns also into involvement and commitment to this community. We have many committees on the CDD, positions that need to be filled. We want to see people join or get involved in the POA. The Community Association needs volunteers on Memorial Day weekend to put flags up. That's where we'd also like to see the same energy, the same people or the different people contribute to the quality of this wonderful paradise community. Thank you.
So my comments, I'm going to try to address a couple of comments that were made in my responses. So, and I think Jerry commented on it, but I just want to reinforce. This board has sought an attorney. This board has had an attorney guide us each step since January on this issue. This isn't new. This will continue, and we will leverage the experts within Becker and Poliakoff. That attorney firm has served this community well, and they will continue to do so. They have land use development attorneys, expert litigators. We have been on retainer. We continue to be on retainer, and there is no question as to whether we will continue with Becker and Poliakoff, at least that I've heard from any of our board members. So those people that say hire an attorney, that's done. There is no need to hire another attorney, and I just want to make sure everybody understands that's to protect the entire association. As it relates to then the law is clear, and it is not an excuse. The special assessment question said 43.6% do not support a special assessment. That has to be considered. So as this board deliberates on what it must do, not wants to do, but must do by law, we have to consider the entire association. So that will be factored into how we proceed. And there's a very clear path outlined for that to occur. We will take those steps on behalf of the association. And most importantly, we will, to the best of our ability, communicate. We have held 6 meetings within the last 2 months. We will continue to do that as needed. We will take this result. We will decide whether we need first an executive board meeting. You will see the meeting notice, whether you're invited or not. That would be with our attorney. There's only 2 cases where we can do that, with an attorney or as we discuss personnel-related issues, performance reviews, et cetera. So we will continue to communicate, hold meetings as necessary, and so what I want to do is I want to thank you for your inputs. There's no question that we will respond to more comments, questions, concerns, proposals that were put on the table. I took as many notes as I could. Lou Perry is the secretary. He and I will compare notes, and we will record the results of this meeting. You will likely receive a summary of this meeting tomorrow, which has been our normal process for the last 6 months. So thank you very much relative to your input. We are going to, in the effort to try to get everybody home for dinner, we are going to speed through the balance of the agenda. But prior to that, Jerry Lewis wants to read one comment into the record. It's not directly related, but it is a public comment that he received from a person who could not be here, and it regards the pickleball courts, so we wanted to at least read that into the record.
So again, good afternoon, getting close to evening. Anyway, this is from Arnie Weitzman, who is a resident of 118 Bella Vista. I actually got it right. Anyway, he starts out the email as, "This email is an official notice to the POA Board of my rules complaint against the CDD for violation of sections 9.1 and 11.4 of the Master Declaration. As the River Club was purchased by the owners of the community, the River Club Master Declaration exemption no longer applies since the CDD is only the manager and not the owner of the property. We, the owners, must comply with all sections of the Master Declaration. Regarding the two Master Declarations, sections 9.1 states, the CDD must preserve open space. With their application to the Venice Planning Commission for the pickleball courts, they show their intent to remove areas that are currently open space within a zone property line front offset distance. Regarding section 11.4, the CDD must comply with the stormwater management permit that they must not alter the retention or reroute stormwater flow. In the application for the pickleball court to the Venice Planning Commission, they show that they are filling a retention area, and altering the flow of stormwater. They claim that this activity is exempt from the permit. The Southwest SWD, okay, has not made a ruling nor notified the community that a permit exemption is applied or requested comment from the affected party. The POA has the ruling responsibility for enforcement of Master Declaration and must notify the CDD of this comply and hold a hearing regarding this issue. Thank you, Arnie Weitzman. He is, by the way, just so that everyone knows, he is a civil engineer, retired. He's been a civil engineer for 40 years. Very well, a very knowledgeable individual and well-spoken. So that's the end of it. I will share this with the board.
We're going to go on with the board agenda, the rest of the strategic items. I would ask Jerry to give a quick update on the joint meeting with the CDD and future steps. Let's do this. Why don't we take a quick break, 5 minutes, because we do want to push this agenda. And anyone that cares to stay, please do so. we're going to have Jerry.
My 350 people, they heard I was going to speak.
So Jerry, you can share quickly with a smaller audience your update with the collaboration with the CDD.
So as you all may know, the CDD and the POA had a workshop a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. And it was a great discussion. And the purpose of it was to share ideas, right? Collaboration and synergy between the boards. That's what the game plan was. And so the net of this is, and I did tell Bill I'm going to make it quick, a few things occurred already. We've had some, I'm going to say, results or actions going forward. So one is this meeting tonight at 5 o'clock was an outcome of our meeting discussion with that board. We're trying to get more residents involved, obviously, and secondarily, changing the time, we thought we'd get some residents who were working to join us. I'm hoping that is the case. Maybe that's some of the folks and some of the folks here, and maybe some of the folks on the Zoom. Second thing, Rick McCafferty and I spoke about landscaping and the ACC having a joint meeting, subject matter experts getting together for community-wide standards. That meeting is tentatively scheduled for July. This is a first in this development. I'm really excited about that because we have a lot of smart people on both of those committees and dedicated, and they do an awful lot of work. Last but not least, I brought up sidewalks because that's something that we all, on occasion, get noticed on and maybe even fined, and I think that's a challenge. And many of the residents here, I'm going to say somewhere between 40 and 50%, are gone for part of the year, right? They go back home, back north, see with their family, et cetera. And so I thought it would be a good idea to, as the CDD does, have someone in here to clean all of the property. CDD hires someone to clean the common property, common sidewalks. We actually have 2 estimates to do this. And I am excited by the estimates because I think that's a pretty good savings for people. I'm not going to share that with you until we vet both of them. One of them I do know, and they're incredibly good. So that's it in a nutshell.
Thank you, Jerry. Next step is to update those that are here and on Zoom. As some of you know, we have been seeking candidates to replace our property manager who chose to leave. We have Kelly that is on loan to us, and we tried to keep her. She turned us down. No, she literally, she lives in Tampa and is about to get married, so that's good news. And we have Marie that will continue, but we will be continuing to look for a replacement candidate. There has been a person shadowing Kelly this week, so we will be evaluating that situation, and we will keep you up to date on what that solution is as we go forward. And this becomes very important because we will determine whether we will be ready by the June board meeting. We did receive all 7 of the proposals from 7 of the 10 companies decided to submit a proposal. The board has received those copies for their individual reviews. We will bring that together in a board meeting to share the summary result, to then make a decision as it relates to the interviews. So we will cut that list of 7 down to some quantity less than 7, and that will be done in a public board meeting. So stay tuned for that, and we will provide those updates as we get closer to that timing with the clear agenda item laid out for each, the property manager search, as well the property RFP. So on the next step is Jerry on bulk services, the Comcast fiber installation and billing/refunds update.
So I was hoping they were going to come back for this, but they didn't. Anyway. So real quick on this one, too, because you all are getting the e-blasts, and I'm asking you to please review those e-blasts because it's chock full of information. First and foremost, Comcast, as of a week or so ago, is ahead of schedule by 2 weeks. Ahead of schedule. Awesome. They're doing a great job. I will tell you, I'm going to sort of go away from this document a little bit. We've had a couple of incidents. 2 were with oil, remediated in short order. They know the priorities. Second thing, we had 2 water events. One was an irrigation pipe that was broken. It was fixed immediately. This was on Saturday. Obviously, no water was flowing, or very little. Last but not least, we had a small pilot bore break, and it wasn't small. There was multiple ones, actually, in the same area. In fact, it was on Passaro. And I went over there and chatted with the gentleman who was boring. And then I got his boss's boss on the phone. We chatted a little bit about it. They had someone out here within an hour. And I would tell you, and it's an estimate, in about 3 hours it was fixed. I went over to the golf course and I met with Chris, who was just, what an incredible partner. I just didn't break a sweat. Just, I know it'll get taken care of. Things happen. He said something different than things, but I won't say that here because you're going to put it on damn YouTube. Anyway, one quick thing on the progress. If you take a look out in the River Club, that map is updated every 2 weeks. We have a meeting on Wednesdays. On Wednesday morning at about 9:30 or so, we put a new map up, and it is updated. And what it has is what's been completed. It's in a drawing. It's a huge map. So it's in like purple, bluish. And then it's what's next. And what's next we're just doing 2 weeks. 2 weeks out. This is the plan. That's in black. And it's all on there. All the information is on there. Please take a look. It's a really good map. I don't want to put it online or send it in an e-blast. You won't be able to see it, most of you, and because I can't see it. So anyway, we're updating every 2 weeks. Talk about the quads, or as I was somewhat corrected today, the condos, or whatever. They've always been quads to me since 2004, so that's what I use. Net results, we're doing a pre-construction there. They're going into the quads, actually into the homes, so it's being scheduled. And all they're doing is bringing the fiber into the quad. That's the plan. Ran into a little bit of a snafu today. We're working on the solutions to that, and I'm confident we will have them very quickly. We did actually, I know for sure, complete one today. The quads are different. They're not all the same, and that's the challenge. But I have a little bit of good news. Out of the 130 residents that we asked to allow us to go in there, we have 130. We've got 60 who have scheduled appointments. We held an event here today. I'm a little disappointed. We had 6, and I was here for 4 hours with 3Com. 6 new appointments. So I don't think we're going to have another event, at least at this point in time, since many people have left, et cetera, et cetera. But, we'll get that done. We have plenty of time to get it done. It doesn't have to be done in the next month. I want to make this clear. They're not connecting anything up in the quads or in your homes. Comcast has to come out and install. By install, all I mean is they're going to take that lovely piece of fiber, bring it to your distribution panel, and connect it up. That isn't going to happen. It's on the plan. I think it's for January. I think we're going to be ahead of schedule. Fingers crossed we don't get a bad rainy season. Okay? I'm the optimist, David. I'm an optimist. Last but not least, courtesy services. Courtesy services are services that are in the River Club that Comcast has. They're giving this service to us. It's free. So we got a reduction in cost for the residents. We have 10 cable boxes that are available, and most have been installed, but there's some tiki work that needs to get done, so they haven't been installed yet. Going to be 2 TVs out there at some point in time once that's completed. There is one out there now, as you know. There's also an internet out there, however. And as you come in, you can see, you can log into it. It's very simple. The login password, is VRC Tiki. We have one for dining. VRC Dining is the password. It's out there. It's right in when you walk in. If you're in the fitness center, my favorite, it's VRC Fitness. All capital letters in all of them should give you better capability. It's 300 down, 10 up on the speeds, and hopefully that you will enjoy the better connectivity and speed. Last but not least, for those of you who are tennis players and/or, need I say, pickleball players, and do not throw anything at me, please, for that. We are installing, and it should happen in about 2 weeks. They had to do some construction to get it there, an internet gateway, 300 meg, at the shed. So the tennis players and in the proximity and perhaps at some point pickleball players will be able to access that gateway for their services. With that, take it away, Bill.
Next up is the boardwalk. We had requested a quote for access control and risk mitigation. Steve, if you would share where we're at and where we're headed, that would be appreciated.
We can't get there from here. We made a proposal through the company that does the gate access, like you see out here, going into the pool itself. And the estimate came up to almost $10,000 for gate access behind the bar area and at the main entrance for the walkway over here going out to the boardwalk. The CDD said no. Said the money's not available, not budgeted, and they did not really even like the idea of putting gate access out there. So hopefully, we have asked them to reiterate with all the people that rent the facility here, especially for parties, weddings, and stuff like that, to acknowledge to them that renting this facility does not gain them access to the boardwalk, and they're not to go out there. So hopefully that will eliminate a potential problem that we had out there, and I think we can go against this again next year, because at the CDD meeting this Monday, they discussed reapplication for the whole gate access out here going into the pool when they go in to do the renovations there for the new landscaping and putting pavers and stuff. They're going to probably end up, according to Keith, that all that stuff is very obsolete and has problems, and they're going to end up replacing the whole system. So maybe next year we can get back on the bandwagon and get them to do it for us too.
And just so you know, the issue was brought up in either the last board meeting or the board meeting before that. We have a risk, and the risk was realized. There was a wedding here, and there were people that were both smoking and drinking and left the evidence on the overlook. That could lead to another fire. And so without question, this board will be dealing with this. It's a $1,200,000 boardwalk. We don't care to have another fire, and so we will deal with risk mitigation. We wanted to understand first what it would cost. Obsolete technology is not something we want to invest in, but at the same time, we will be working with the CDD on the risk mitigation as it relates to contracts that exist. So if there's a contract that exists, we may end up asking for waivers to be signed so that patrons who are having weddings here are not out on the boardwalk, because we have no control. And if they were to do what was done earlier this year, again, and they drop it in the grass instead of on the actual boardwalk, which is composite material, it could and likely would start a fire. And so that's the issue that we face. And so this board is going to continue to push this issue. Whether it's in the budget for the CDD, that's not an issue, because we have that responsibility. And we will figure out a way to protect the association, which could face damages. And I'll just leave it at that. So with that, that was the reason for that topic. We would normally do this, and I'm going to push the issue, and we are going to push the approval of the minutes of the prior meetings. We'll bring those up in our next board meeting. I don't think there's anything in there with the summaries that we distribute that are going to be problematic. There was a vote on the survey to fund it at $6,500, so anybody that was not in attendance. That would have been captured in the minutes. It was not specifically detailed in the summary, just for your information. The board supported 6,500, and the Community Association board supported the other 6,500. That survey was $13,000 in total. The financials, we are not going to go through the financials the board received. The board, we have taken some action recently, as some of you know, and have seen the results. We've made some major repairs to the boardwalk itself for soft spots. Many of the corners were repaired in late December, early January. All that expense rolled into 2022. Of course, that was not budgeted because the budget was approved in November, actually distributed in November, approved in October. So we have taken the money where it should come from, which is reserves, and it is then this board's responsibility to refund that amount of money, which was just under $75,000, to repair, if I remember right, 17, 18 corners. And the other thing is think about it this way. The reserves has a major funding issue requirement based on useful life in 2027. So the reserve study says, when is it likely going to need repairs? Those repairs we just did are no longer going to have to be made on the same timetable because now their useful life will be later. So technically speaking, that 75,000 has now been pushed into the future. So we will have another reserve study to confirm what does our reserve funding plan need to look like. I have shared this before. The board in the 2022 budget has $89,800 per year going into reserves. Previous years, it was at $35,000 to $40,000, in that range. The Comcast contract contributed about $34,000 per year for 9 years. So that's not assessed. That's obviously already funded. This board can only use 1/9 each year. So a large portion of the $40,000 versus $90,000 rounded off was supported by the Comcast contract and will be for 9 years. Therefore, the assessments will not change because of that contribution. So many people had asked us, what are we doing with that $303,000 that we got from Comcast? It's going directly into offsetting assessments that this community would otherwise have had to pay. So that you will see in future budgets, there will be $33,660, which is the 1/9 included. So the financials are in good shape. We will go through the details with the community in the coming board meetings, but we're going to save that in order for us to continue and to move forward because there are a couple of items that we do need to address. We have normally administrative reports include reports from the property manager. They include reports from each of the major committees. We are going to do one committee report tonight. The board pushed some issues back to the Rules Committee, and so those issues regarded difficulties with fining. Just to preface that, we had a number of anomalies during the year of 2021. Between July and November 1st, the board and the property management staff were focused on the telecommunications contract. We did not spend as much time because we did not have the time to focus on inspections and the fining process. So what was noticed in June or July was notified to the homeowners, and because there was limited follow-up, many of those fines were unpaid. We notified homeowners, but they were unpaid. So when you go back and look at records and think about surprising homeowners 5, 6, 7 months later, it's not a good idea. So this board struggled. The Rules Committee struggled first. And I'm the board liaison, so I know I was there with them. They struggled mightily. We had a rules committee member who had health problems, came back, so there's a variable. We had Melissa off sick for 3 months. So when you put all those variables together, we did not do diligence on that process the way it should have been. And so the Rules Committee was challenged by this board to go back and look at some things. We had made some recommendations based on those anomalies. And Darlene Schimberg, the vice chair of that committee, is going to give the results of a meeting, a special Rules Committee meeting that was held yesterday. And it gets into what did the Rules Committee say, and also a revision, a proposed revision to the first letter that homeowners would receive as a result of their inspections. Thanks, Darlene.
I'm glad I have a smaller audience. It's a little bit easier. One of the things that we wanted to do was to provide the entire community with more consistency in what we were doing. We felt that that was not happening in the past, and we wanted to see that it was done now. So what's going to happen going forward is that we are going to be sending a quarterly reminder to all residents in an email blast that we will have monthly inspections of the entire community done by the property manager and someone on the rules committee. So that there's one person that is property management and one person that is a resident that will be doing it. The other thing that we have is on the first letter, we felt that there was, regarding the deficiencies, we felt that there was not enough information provided to the residents for them to truly understand what was going on. And in those letters, sometimes were lumped several different violations for one property. So going forward, we are going to have one letter per violation sent to the residents so that they know exactly that there's 4 things that you need to address, and it needs to be addressed in this period of time. And that will be completely stated in the new letter that's provided. At that point in time, when the Rules Committee meets again, if the violation has not been rectified and completed by the 45-day period that is specified in the letter, then what will happen is that the rules will recommend to the board to fine, and a final letter will be sent by the property manager to the resident stating that this is what's going to happen. That way, I think we're following all the steps. You know we're inspecting, you're going to get a letter, you've got a time period to cure, and then the final results will happen if that is not completed. Communication during this whole process is going to be the key to everything. So please feel free to communicate with the property manager, anybody on the board, or anybody on the rules when you're doing this. Thank you.
Thanks, Darlene. And I just want you to know that that's the Rules Committee recommendations. So the Rules Committee, like any committee, makes their recommendations to the board. We have to take that and rule on that. And so there's really 3 issues that come to the forefront. What is in the process today says that we will communicate each month to each homeowner, letting them know that an inspection will occur. I can honestly say that I'm an engineer, and if you say you're going to do it and you don't do it, that's a bigger problem. And so one of the things that the Rules Committee is saying is we believe, and our, let's say, rental property manager, who has much experience with other communities, shared a recommendation with us to do this on a quarterly basis, to inform the people on a quarterly basis because we felt once a month was too much. And so I'd just like, that is specifically what is being recommended. As it relates to the first letter, it's really 3 things. We send the notice, and although we used in this example 45 days, there are 3 different time periods within the rules 45 days is the longest, it's the standard rule that is violated. If you have a barking dog, there's actually law, and it's in the master declaration, that's an immediate fine. But it takes 3 of those occurrences to generate fines. So there's all sorts of sub-rules to that. But for the board's benefit, each of the letters will have the same clear communication on what should be done. The other item that is of importance is that the discipline of inserting a photo was strongly recommended as appropriate. If you can snap a photo and insert it and have it included in the letter, everyone can see whether you agree with the photo matching your house. But that photo is very important for the homeowner, but it's very important also if there's any legal challenges. So that is the reason for that, and that is something that is being recommended as appropriate. Some of the rules you're not going to see necessarily in a photo. And then lastly, it is also important that the commitment that is made and communication that is made to the property manager is very important. If we don't hear from a homeowner and they receive a notice that says, we've noticed a violation on your property, it's not a fine, it's we've noticed a violation. If we receive no communication, that tells then the board, we received no communication, and the board's going to react a different way if somebody's working with us, making commitments, trying to get a contractor to address it, because in many cases, the contractor might not be available. And we do have those situations, and so we need to be clear. If you communicate, it will help us. And I just want to make sure you know, the people who are doing the inspections include homeowners, also the property manager. And that's really, truly to make sure that you understand, we're all homeowners. We don't want to fine anybody. We really don't. But we also need to address the rules and regulations that the association has agreed in order to maintain the property. And that's the clear role. So I want to, with those 3, and then there are 2 other points that the board recommended, but those 3, you received the letters. Any issue with what was recommended? Okay, I'm going to make a motion then that the revisions to the procedures, which include the change that gets quarterly notification, the change in the first letter only, we will come back and address any others for clarification as well, and then specifically the clarity within that letter as presented to the board be approved tonight. Any discussion?
The notification period for another change, we don't have to go through the 6 months.
I am recommending that we make this change now in order, and we can adapt. I don't want to get into making rule changes more frequently than the board has agreed to, which is every 6 months. But this is causing a significant amount of people not knowing, people not communicating, and we have a process that we're not following. Those 3 combination issues, and especially not following a process, that's a legal nightmare. So I really believe we should make this change as the exception to our 6-month rule, specifically as it relates to something that I consider urgent needing to be made.
And the violation letters will come back to us for the final approval, because initially, years ago, we went through wordsmithing for months and months and months.
Yep.
Okay.
You have the letter in the board package. So the board package included the letter, that went through wordsmithing, as you can imagine, in the Rules Committee. And again this morning, Darlene. But no, that's okay. And it is intended to be the Rules Committee recommendation. And so what I would ask is, if after we vote, there is any feedback, we can redress this. And so literally, the intent is, first and foremost, we really need that letter. So I'm going to say we approve it conditioned upon any response that any board members provide, that if there is an issue, we will bring it back to ensure that we have clear approval. I don't intend to get into a constant wordsmithing of letters.
And I would comment for a moment that it's only substantive change. Because if it's a minor tweak to the letter, but the letter and the process is being improved for the benefit of the residents, it has to be a significant change for us to bring this back again. Otherwise, we should move forward.
Okay, so then I'll add Jerry's revision to that with the agreement based upon his seconding. I assume you agree to. So based on that, any other comments? Otherwise, we'll take a vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Can Lou wave his hand to you? He can, we do have the legal authority to vote via Zoom. So the motion passes 5-0. There were a couple of other things that the Rules Committee listened to the board. One of the steps in the process you all need to know is inspection, recommendation to the board for first letter. Board approves the first letter. It is then sent only after the Rules Committee says thumbs up, thumbs down. That's the only thing the Rules Committee can do. What is the evidence? And you think in terms of due process. So the board, actually, inspection is the policeman picking you up for a speeding ticket. If you want to challenge it in court, you go to court, the evidence is presented. So the evidence is presented, and it is presented to the jury, which is the Rules Committee. The Rules Committee then takes the result of that evidence, renders the decision back to the judge. The judge is the board. The board has the authority, if there's a lack of evidence, if for whatever reason they're missing something, to address that. In the last meeting, one board member, Jerry Lewis, said, I think there should be a finding report. In other words, Rules Committee goes through the following fines, and we could see as many as 35 to 45% of those coming back, being rejected. They were rejected for good reason, but the board was never receiving the reason. So what we're also doing as a part of this, and I'm going to make a separate motion because that is important, is that the Rules Committee is saying they will provide a report from each Rules Committee meeting on any rejections with a reason. And we had one from yesterday, and I'm just going to cover it high level. Through this process of these 6, 7, 8 months, we had a home that was sold. When that process occurs, there should be an estoppel. During the estoppel process, the new homeowner should come to understand that that property was sold with a violation on it. They either take responsibility for that violation or not. So the issue is, in this case, we properly notified both the old homeowner and the new homeowner, but we improperly notified by not issuing the hearing letter. And without a hearing notice, like you do in a court of law, if you don't receive a hearing notice, the finding is invalid. And so in this case, the recommendation for the finding is invalid, no improper notification, but that doesn't mean it stops, because now we will issue the hearing notice to that property. So just in one particular case, out of 9 that this committee reviewed, they found sufficient evidence to overturn, if you will, reject. But then we're going to work with the homeowner to communicate the expectations. The new homeowner is not expunged because they were notified of this during the estoppel process. They knew that they were buying a home with a violation on it. So that is an example, and I'd just like the board to, I'll make a motion that we add that step in the process, because it is not there today. The declaration is clear. Rules Committee does a thumbs up or thumbs down. The process does the exact same thing. What we're saying is, we add one more step. If a rejection notice is issued, then the Rules Committee will provide the reasoning behind that rejection, which includes the evidence. So I make the motion to include that in the revisions to the process.
One clarification, please. So my clarification is, Rules Committee says we reject what the board assessed, the fine. Comes back, let's assume, just for the moment, that we don't agree. What happens? So that's my question. Sure. No? Kelly, who came up here? Because, can I just make one more quickie comment? Because if you follow Bill's law assessment, what happens is when the jury says not guilty, what can the judge do? He can affirm the not guilty verdict, or he can say, I don't agree with that. You're going to jail for 3 days. They can do that, right? They have that right. I think the board must have that right. And if it requires us to modify, which I believe this is the case, the rules, maybe even the master declaration, which is a nosebleed, then maybe we need to do that.
The whole intent is obviously due process, and that is absolutely crystal clear in our declaration. We are going to provide people due process. If the board, excuse me, I'll step back. Every committee in the POA, as well as in the CDD, serve at the pleasure of the boards. They are appointed. In that appointment, the board always retains the authority. So the board always has the ability to say, we don't agree. And then we would be in the process of communicating back, because if the homeowner is there during the hearing, which homeowners do come to the hearing at times, they're going to want to hear what the board decision is if the board decision overturns what was decided in the Rules Committee. So there will also then be a communication to the homeowner. So that, at least as I see it, I don't know, Kelly, if you want to add anything else.
No, so from how I understand this process is the board reviews a list of homeowners who could potentially be fined. The board is the one who decides the frequency of the fine, amount, et cetera. We do have already clear terminologies of what those are, and we typically go by those. However, it is a case-by-case basis. So they would review these first. They then go to the Rules Committee. And the Rules Committee, because they have been appointed by the board to make this decision, will make the decision. A homeowner is permitted to overturn they're not overturned, they're permitted to appeal, and that would then go to the board for the appeal. So I just want to make sure I understand, and we all understand, that what we're talking about now is having this list be then presented to the board after the committee has seen it, just to solidify. And, right, okay.
And I will second the motion with that clarification.
Any discussion, further discussion?
I know Steve has something.
He's resisting.
I could be Vanna White, you know.
No, that's all right.
All right, so all in favor? Is Lou Perry got his thumbs up? Okay. 4-1, okay? Okay, motion passes. The remaining, let me finish one item, and then we'll come back. I'm not going to open up to questions, only because I was trying to leave at 6:45, and we're almost there. We have one fining recommendation. Kelly, do you want me to take care of it? I can do that if you want. Okay, so distributed to the board was one finding recommendation. Kelly and Darlene did inspect the property and make sure, because I'm not looking at that listing. If I remember correctly, it was for the, all right. Right, so we had trees removed from a property because of disease. They were notified that those trees needed to be replaced. They have not submitted an ACC application, and it has been noticed. And so there is a recommendation for finding the property for removing 3 mature Washingtonian palms without replacement. The policy says they need to replace with at least 2. So that is the recommendation on that finding, and it is in the board package with the information there. Any questions?
What kind of palms were they? That they were?
They were Washingtonians that were removed, so they were full mature palms, and by the rules and regulations, they need to be replaced clearly with a mature 8-foot or 10-foot clear trunk. 8-foot clear trunk. We changed it from 10 to 8, and I didn't recall which one, whether it's been enacted. So it needs to be replaced with a palm of their choice from the actual rules and regulation. There is a table of what palms they could use. So this fine would be for $100 if they don't cure that situation in the appropriate time.
Have they responded at all to the notice?
No response.
How long has it been?
Okay, so recommendation, I'll make the motion that they be fined the $100. And any discussion? All in favor? Aye. And what does Mr. Lou Perry say? Okay, and with that, then that actually completes the agenda other than board comments, property manager comments, and we will take a select few, if they are quick, from the audience. Laura, you had your hand raised. And the other comment is, the first notice is also delivered certified mail, so you don't have the ability to utilize a link. We do email. And that's a good idea. We can add in VenetianPOA.com. And I think it's probably on the signature line for the property manager who issues that, so I'll take a look at that. But the point is, most importantly, is the communication. If somebody does not communicate, somebody does not respond, and unfortunately, that is way too often the case. And so that's clearly in the letter. Please respond, because if we don't hear and we don't see that you've met the commitment, there is a clear message that says, if that happens, you are subject to a fine. It is clear as day. There's no question about it. And so that's the important part. Any other questions, comments? When you have self-representation, which we have a tremendous number of those, when properties sell before listings, which is most of the properties in this community in the last 3 months, it happens. Estoppels are not as clear and as frequent as they normally were in the case where you had real estate representatives on all. If you have a real estate broker, you're probably going to have an estoppel. That's like having your attorney sitting next to you. Darlene? We have liens if they meet the standards. So the violation has to amount to more than $1,000. Yes, it has to be according to the law, and the law is clear. It has to reach $1,000. Otherwise, for violations only, we cannot put a lien on a property. If there are other reasons, such as not paying assessments, that adds to the lien recommendation. Any other questions? Okay. Motion to adjourn at 6:48. I'm late. Is there a second? All right. Thank you very much for all those people that hung in with us. We do appreciate it.